Unsolved homicides in Henrico County and the Division of Police are very important. I know the detectives who are assigned these cases, they never forget those unsolved cases. They live with these cases. I know detectives have had victims' photographs sitting on their desk, and they see that victim every day when they come to work. And it motivates them, it reminds them of the importance of trying to solve that case. Technology changes, the science change, and it's important to get a fresh look at these cases and hopefully to stimulate some information from the public. Maybe someone out here will see this case, will remember something, and will call us to help the detectives who are committed to solve these unsolved homicides, get the lead they need to bring this case to justice.
You don't know the impact until you get that phone call. You cannot imagine the pain the family goes through. I mean, just the shock of getting that call. You know, it's not just a normal passing in life. It's someone took someone from you without any warning. Inez was my grandmother. We all grew up calling her Nanny. And then when she had great-grandchildren, they called her Great Nanny, which there were 7 grandchildren and then 9 great-grandchildren. When I was asked to do the interview, I didn't have to think. I knew it needed to be done because this has been going on for 19 years. We don't know why. We don't know why, or we don't understand how anyone could do this to her. Someone took the largest part of her family away. And when this happened, it didn't just happen to her. It happened to the whole family.
Well, I mean, I think about her all the time, and I still get upset over it. I can't help that. It was just such a shock that something like this happened. And we've never, been able to put closure to it to find out what had happened. I mean, somebody being unhealthy and passing away is one thing, but something like this happening to somebody is something else.
I was called out on the 17th of September of '94. It was a Saturday morning to the scene of a homicide on Lowell Street. From the date of the event until early January of '95, I was lead investigator on it. No one else lived in the home but Inez Childress. Her family lived up the street, several doors up the street from her. It was her daughter who had found her in the tub.
We would go take her to get her hair cut. Like I said, that morning I called her because I didn't hear anything from her, so I called her about 7:30, and I couldn't get her. So I waited maybe 5 minutes and called again, and I still could not get her. So I said that to myself. I said, that's real odd. And I went up there, and that's when I found her in the bathtub. And I honestly, I don't remember exactly what I did after that. I was just so overwhelmed when I saw her. I didn't know which way to turn or what to do. I think I went back down the road, and then my other daughter, well, she lived down there with me, her and her husband. And then she came up there with me, and that's when she called the 911. I did not do that.
I lived down the street from my grandmother, and I could hear my mom screaming or someone screaming. And she came into the house, and I could hardly understand what she was saying, but I understood enough that I needed to go with her back up to Nanny's. And of course, when I got up there, she took me to the bathroom where she was. And I guess when I first looked at her, it was like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, it was just, I could tell she was just, when I first glanced at her, I could tell she was just lifeless, just laying there. And there was just nothing I could do for her. Like, we couldn't understand who in the world would even want to do something like that to her. So I just can't imagine, the horror that she felt when that happened. And of course, by looking at her, I could tell, there was nothing we could do. And then I had to get out of there, of course. So I got out of there, and I kind of looked around, and I noticed a couple of drawers open in her bedroom. But I'm not sure what, I guess they were looking for money or jewelry. But of course, she was an elderly person with one income, so she didn't get but so much. And of course, probably if they would have asked her for money, she would have just given it to them, or food or anything like that.
Just wondered how much suffering she went through before she finally died. That's what bothered me. I just wish that they would find somebody. I wish that we could find out who did this to her. So I'm still angry with that person, very angry, yes. And a lot of times I think, I think about her, and a lot of times I even see her, or maybe calling me sometimes. I have had that feeling also. Yes.
We found the victim, Ms. Childress, in the bathtub. The bathtub was full of water up to about 3 inches from the top. The victim was lying in the water herself with a pink-colored or orange-colored towel over her. And upon lifting the towel, you observed a white cloth ligature around her throat and around her neck area. She was fully clothed in her nightgown. It appears that she was placed in the water. The medical examiner tells us that the victim died from suffocation as well as drowning.
The information as to what happened and who did it, it just never came in. No one really knew anything. There wasn't a lot of evidence found at the scene in order to clear the investigation. And the longer it went, the colder it got. And we really need someone to come forward from the community, someone that might know something or might remember something that would be important. But the case got cold after several months.
And she would literally give you the clothes off her back if you needed them. I mean, all you had to do was ask. If you needed something, all you had to do was ask her.
Nanny had the best hugs. You can get a casual hug from someone and it's like a casual passing, but when she hugged you and held you, it was just it was just all emotion. It just made you feel loved. It was just warm and inviting. So it was, if I ever had a bad day, I could see her and get a hug, and things would just be so much better. But it went away in a matter of just an instant. So I don't have that anymore. She was a healthy person. I have no doubt she would have been around a lot longer. She would have seen the addition of, 4 or 5 more, great-grandchildren, and then a great-great-granddaughter. I mean, she would have been here to see that had someone not done this. I think all of us looked at Nanny as being the backbone of the family. She held everything together. Her house was the center. It's like the focal point of the family gatherings for the holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving. Nanny grew up in that house as a child. I believe she lived there about 70 years.
We ate Monday night dinner with her every week. She loved to cook, and she made the best homemade rolls ever.
Probably one of the most difficult things is the date of her death coincides exactly 2 years to the date of my grandfather. So that date was already difficult for us. The last 3 or 4 years of my grandfather's life, he had been bedridden. She refused to let him go to an assisted living or a nursing home. She kept him in the home. I mean, she was there with him every night. She slept in the same room with him in a twin bed beside the hospital bed. I mean, she did everything for him. They were married over 50 years. So that was her, the love of her life. It's just the kind of person she was.
Typical murders are gunshots, perhaps stabbings when I was working, but I guess a few strangulations, but this was a very odd case. The circumstances were very odd. Time of the morning, location. The neighborhood was a very nice neighborhood, very pleasant. Miss Childress didn't bother anybody in the neighborhood. She was well liked. Everyone knew her. She lived on the corner. People who would pass by, she would wave to them. She was a very nice lady.
That morning, that Saturday morning, I was on call. I was assigned to the robbery unit, and I was on call for the weekend. And it was about 9 o'clock in the morning to respond to this address, reference to apparently appeared to be a homicide. Uniformed officers were already on the scene, had secured the scene. I walked in through the front door and started looking around and looking for evidence or seeing what we had there. Everything seemed to be normal. It was not in any disarray. It didn't look like any type of fight had occurred. I walked in, the kitchen, I believe, was the first thing I saw. The coffee cup that apparently the victim had been using was still warm. The back door was open, or the screen door was not locked. I didn't see any signs of forced entry at that point. The medication was still there on the table. We couldn't tell if anything was stolen at that point, but there was no obvious TVs missing or stereos. Nothing was ransacked. The dresser drawers weren't turned inside out and dumped over like we see in a lot of burglary cases.
The only area that showed any sign of any movement or anything was in the bathroom, next to the bathtub where the victim was found.
In my career, many homicides and shootings and stabbings that I couldn't tell you, but this one was like it was yesterday. It was very nerve-wracking, actually, to see an elderly person was found in this condition, strangled and drowned in a tub. It was very shocking, actually.
After the towel was removed from the victim, Ms. Childress, we discovered some surgical tape loosely attached to her left jaw. It appeared that she hadn't been there too long. Her skin didn't give evidence of being there very long. Under investigation of the bathtub itself, we took in, after removing the victim and removing the water, we found out that the stopper in the bathtub was a stopper that had come unhooked from its chain and had to be manually placed into the bathtub. As we went through the scene, we did one of our major processes of processing fingerprints for the bathroom. In the bathroom, we did recover some latents from some areas that are still outstanding. We feel they are the suspects. My personal opinion is that the victim knew the assailant. The towel being placed over their head. If you go back and look at old cases where people knew each other, they try to cover the victim so they can't be so they're not reminded of what they've done. Henrico County is excellent evidence keeping for major crimes. We still have all the original evidence from 1994. And our cold case unit goes back and reviews the evidence, and with new techniques and everything, evidence is constantly being submitted to the lab.
A great effort was put out to canvass the neighborhood. We went to every neighbor on Lowell Street, from 9 Mile Road for 2 or 3 blocks.
Behind the house there's a wooded, it was a lot of overgrown weeds. We taped that off with police tape, and I recall myself personally going back and walking through this area looking for evidence. Theoretically, very possible somebody could have been hiding back there as well. They got trapped in because the police got there so quick. So you're looking for everything. Again, people dropping things, suspects dropping items that we could use as evidence. And I remember looking back there, walking through all that, and we didn't find anything.
The things that were in disarray weren't thrown about, but they were, for example, an Afghan, according to Ms. Childress's daughter, an Afghan was on the floor. She said her mother would never have allowed that. That would never have been. A drawer in the bedroom was partially open. She said her mother would not have had that happen. She said her mother was an extremely neat housekeeper. But it didn't look like there was a lot of rummaging of the house.
She would not have left that like that. If she had been by herself and there was no one in there with her, she would not have left that stuff on the table. It would have been cleaned up.
From what her daughter said about her mother typically leaving the back door open for the cat to come and go after she let it out, I feel that someone, that's my feeling, I feel that someone saw that door open. Perhaps knew that she lived there alone. And I think these things had to be known, that she lived there alone, her age. Perhaps, now her purse was missing. Perhaps they knew that where her purse was kept. Maybe she was in the bathroom at the time and this person slipped in to get something out of the purse, although she wasn't known to keep a lot of money, but maybe to get the purse or get money out of the purse. Perhaps Ms. Childress surprised them, and perhaps they were known to each other. That's just my feeling on the case, was my feeling when I had the case. I feel that one person that knows something, saw something, heard something, that one person coming forward could really be beneficial to us. We had a partial fingerprint that was recovered that, to my knowledge, has not been identified at this point. I'm convinced that there is someone out there that knows something and maybe had a reason back then not to come forward. We just need for them to come forward and tell us what they know, or whether it be what you know, what you heard, what you saw. That didn't mean anything to you on September 17th of '94, but could break the case.
You know, there's somebody out there that knows something, and there's a person out there that did this, that's living their life every day now, probably without a second thought about what they did. But we think about it. It hasn't stopped, and it'll never go away. It is a form of torture. Just knowing what someone did to her and the nature of how they took her life. And the fact that a person covered her face, I think they knew her. And it makes it even harder. Our ask as a family is that if anybody has any information, is to have someone stand up and speak out for her. She deserves it.